Artificial intelligence and machine learning can be our secret weapon in the world of bacteria. Think of AI as a super speed detective and an exceptional pharmacist, which can swiftly decode the bacterial DNA, telling us about the long evolutionary history that it went through. It can scrutinize the DNA to see what kind of methods might stop a bacterial outbreak. As we'll see later in the video, AI can even be like a curious biologist, an actual researcher coming up with different experiments to run. And it can help us find patterns in things that no human ever could, like weather, population density, and cleanliness. It teaches us about our own microbiome, the trillions of bacteria that live inside of our gut and inside of our body. And these bacteria communicate to each other like a society, and AI can help us understand that language like a master linguist. And it also can act like a skilled photographer, putting together different images like a super microscope to help us actually see what these things look like and how they interact. Bacteria and AI are just so cool. So about this, did you know that scientific research has connected the food that we crave to the bacteria that live inside of our gut? That's right, the balance of microbes here in our digestive tract are causal. They actually influence our diet and our behavior. And now neuroscientists are figuring out how they can see what kind of nutrient deficiencies we have just by analyzing our gut bacteria makeup. So they can tell us what kind of foods we need to consume. And hint hint, it's more fiber, more vegetables, more healthy stuff. And that chemical makeup can influence our food cravings. Maybe that's why some bad bacteria make you hungry, you eat more, but you get more of the bad bacteria and you keep eating. In fact, there's two specific bacteria that you might want to know about. One is called Actobacter and the other is Lactobacillus. And they were notably effective at influencing food cravings, suppressing protein cravings, and boosting the desire for sugar in fruit flies. So if you've been waiting for a pill to replace a traditional fecal transplant, the wait is over. Imagine being able to swallow a pill that's a little bit like a mini healthy compost heap. Well, the FDA has now officially approved the first poop pill. And this magical little brown thing is called Vowst. Created by Sears Therapeutics in Massachusetts, it's packed with great bacteria from human poop. In a test with 180 patients, almost 80% of them didn't have the recurrence of a really bad bacteria that nobody wants in their gut called C. diff. And it worked especially well for people who just got off antibiotics, which, wreaks havoc on all the good bacteria and the bad when you take it. So the FDA says there's still a small chance that the pill could have an infection or a food allergen, but they were extremely careful and tried really hard only to get the healthy bacteria out of the human poop samples, well screened, and they tried to take just the best stuff. Smash that subscribe button. All right, so there's another new artificial intelligence model that we're gonna talk about. This one works with bacteria. It is called BacterAI. It was built by the smart folks over at the University of Michigan, and it runs a whopping 10,000 experiments on bacteria per day. It's like a curious child starting from scratch and then figuring out what kind of experiments to actually do to the bacteria to get to the end goal. And you might have thought I said it wrong, but no, it's actually coming up with 10,000 different experiments. It's trying all sorts of combinations of ways you could learn about the bacteria. And it's learning from each result. It's minimizing an error of what kind of experiments we should even be running in the first place. And over time, it's trying to simplify some patterns out into rules that human researchers can use. So this is cool. It's not a researcher using AI as much as it's an AI figuring out better ways to do research. And BacterAI has already found out about the eating habits of two different types of bacteria that live in our mouth: Streptococcus gordoni and Streptococcus sanguinens. I'll link below if I'm not saying that right. But here's the interesting part. So out of 20 life-supporting amino acids, it figured out the exact combination of those amino acids that these two bacteria like to munch on. And after doing these thousands of experiments on these bacteria every single day, it now more than 90% of the time knows what these two little guys want to eat. So I came across this doozy. There might be a connection between a special type of bacteria that lives in the wetlands and Parkinson's disease. A group of scientists from two different universities in Finland discovered that a common type of tiny organism called Decode, usually found in wet and marshy places, might actually have an impact on Parkinson's disease. These tiny organisms release a substance that causes some of the proteins in our brain cells to form harmful clumps. And these clumps are known as Lewy bodies. And this study builds on some earlier research that showed that people who had more of the bacteria Decode in their poop had worse Parkinson's symptoms. And these scientists think that this bacteria might be connected to those clumps, those changes that we see in Parkinson's patients. And they hope that this discovery could lead to early detection. And they also found that when you give that bacteria to worms, they end up dying earlier, and suggests that if we can remove that kind of bacteria from inside of our guts or the worm's guts, then less death, less Parkinson's. Okay, so here's a trippy off-the-wall article. Bacteria can now be used to actually measure things in the environment. Yeah, like a thermometer or something. They're actually genetically engineering the bacteria so that it changes color and shape depending on certain environmental factors, so they can just look at it and see a history of what happened in that area. There's a type of bacteria that comes together in a pattern, they call it a swarm pattern, and they can change the way that swarm pattern looks depending on certain environmental variables. So the specific bacteria is called P. mirabilis. Now the patterns can look a little bit subtle, so that's why they're also using artificial intelligence to get in there and actually notice those like really minute details. It's like a freaking bacteria lie detector test. But this same method can be used to do things like measure the amount of pollution that the bacteria went through, toxic chemicals in the environment, and all sorts of useful warning signals we would want. And in the long term, these researchers even want to come to a point where they can measure this kind of bacteria so well that we could put it inside the human body to learn about all of the things that are happening in here. So then we could, poo out a little bit and then take a sample and be like, whoa, here's the history of all the things that have happened in your stomach. Here's what went right and wrong. Like, who knows where this is going to lead? Oh, actually, one place that it might lead is a replacement for antibiotics. So instead of just like mass killing the good and the bad because there's too much bad in your body, this bacteria might give us a signal of what a healthy microbiome used to look like, what went wrong, and then we can reverse engineer how to fix it without having to kill everything. But one thing that's even more crazy than that is that we now have a new antibiotic to a superbug thanks to artificial intelligence. Researchers from McMaster University and MIT have used artificial intelligence to find a new antibiotic that can actually stop the superbug, Abaucin, which is a bacteria that's actually considered a critical threat from the World Health Organization. This bacterium that has evolved a resistance to almost every antibiotic that we know has been posing a serious risk in hospitals, nursing homes, and all across the world. When a patient with an open wound gets a bacterial infection of this type, it's nasty. Patients often require ventilators and blood catheters, and there's not a lot you can do with antibiotics. So the fact that this AI algorithm screened thousands of candidates and came up with exactly the combination of the drug that would actually stop this is incredible. It actually predicted a new structural class of antibiotics. And from there, that led to the identification of a specific antibiotic that we now call Abaucin. And Abaucin's actually been tested in laboratories along with 239 other discoveries by the AI. And in all of those, there's actually 9 more solutions that are ready to be investigated. So now let's talk about the wonderful and sort of gross human gut. It's often seen as a simple organ with an unpleasant function. But would you be surprised to know that it plays a critical role in our wellness? Yeah, beyond digestion, it actually regulates our mood and our immune system. It breaks down essential nutrients, but not just by itself, by the trillions of bacteria that live on top of it. It does some things directly with the food, but it does other things to feed bacteria that have a complex network of things they do to the food to help us. So vitamins, micronutrients, these things called short-chain fatty acids, which are super helpful too, I guess. It's all this complex orchestrated process without any kind of central leadership. But the gut bacteria keeps all of that working properly. Some scientists are even researching whether or not there should be bacteria in other parts of our body to be healthy. So when it comes down to it, the big takeaway is eat vegetables. Fiber is what the gut needs to feed the bacteria that feed us and do all this modulation that we can't even begin to understand yet. I'm sorry, we're still at that point in history where you still need to eat your vegetables. Because that's called prebiotics, meaning it's food for those guys. The fascinating world of bacteria offers us an insight, a window into the evolution, the history of life itself. Those little microscopic beings are considered to be the first life on Earth, and they're found everywhere. They co-evolved with us. They're in the soil, in the water, in the air, and to try to remove them isn't healthy. Well, I mean, some are, but some aren't. It's complicated. But it's good that you understand that it's complicated because bacterial cells in our own body outnumber human cells. Yeah, there's a wake-up call for you. You're mostly not you if we just measure you in DNA. They're both capable and knowledgeable of how to perform complex biochemical reactions. They can convert nitrogen into plant-usable forms. They can break down organic molecules. They can produce extreme proteins that can survive in the harshest of environments. Understanding bacteria is crucial to addressing one of humanity's greatest health challenges, antibiotic resistance. And as bacteria evolve, so too is our understanding of them. And AI is also our new tool to understand the complexities of micro-scale life forms, which opens up a world of scientific advancement. AI and bacterial science are going to come together to help our health and our environment. Smash that subscribe button!